Okay, let's do it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Best Other Day. Fern here. I am here with my new found best friend, Nick
That's right.
Spagnol. And so he and I were trading DMs like a week ago?
Yeah, about a week ago. Yeah.
Yeah, about a week ago. And I was like, hey, dude, let's just do a podcast because this is I've had this same conversation 4 times in the last week. And what we're going to talk about today is purchasing a CrossFit gym, which is not a new thing, right? Like this is not like a new concept. However, it is an interesting time, and I think there's a lot of people who are trying to navigate that. And I think you probably fall in one of two categories where you either are, it's kind of like stocks, right? If the market's down, you either look at that as terrifying or you're like stocks are on sale. So I think some people are
Right.
looking at this as an opportunity to take advantage of an opportunity, and some people see it as a horrific decision to make. So I brought Nick in. So thanks for your time, brother. I know you're busy. So
Having me. Yeah.
so we're just going to kind of dive in, and this is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to let Nick kind of lead this, I guess, and just kind of ask questions, and we'll just kind of
Sure.
walk through it step by step. So first, kind of give us a little bit of background about just like you, where you're from. I know you're from the Berg.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, obviously big sports town, big Penguins fan. Steelers, Pirates are a little bit lacking, so maybe not going to touch on that too much. But for myself personally, started
So
CrossFit.
on that
Yeah,
note, because I've got a couple of coaches here from Pittsburgh, do you say
sure.
power clean or do you say power clean?
It's like power, PAHR, power clean.
Power
You
clean.
skip the whole OW.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But I guess myself personally started CrossFit about 3.5 years ago. I got my L1 about 2 years ago.
Wow.
Maybe 2.5 years ago. CrossFit Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Denise Thomas was my flow master. I had
DT.
Yuri. I had Margot Alvarez. I had Adrian Conway. I was geeking out everywhere.
That's a
man.
strong crew. That's a strong
Yeah,
crew.
right. And watch them work out on lunchtime and everything too.
Yeah,
Um,
not just strong in their skill set as coaches, but literally
right.
strong
Right.
crew when we start talking about Adrian. So,
Well, it wasn't
very
far
cool.
after he had took down Mayhem for the team comp, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Dude, how was that? Like, how awesome!" It was just really cool for me. I love that.
He's just
But
a good dude.
yeah, he definitely seems that way, and it's fun to get down with those people for sure. So yeah, now I'm to a point where in my kind of personal CrossFit progression, where I'm exploring the possibility of doing it, my way. I've been in other gyms and I've seen how they do it, and I've taken notes and I've learned, and I'm trying to learn more, always learning. But is it time to maybe try to do it my way? And exactly like you said with the COVID thing, stocks fall. To me, that's time to buy. So the general maybe consensus on CrossFit and just a brick and mortar gym in general right now is probably kind of low. So I see that as an opportunity to maybe get in the game, maybe a little bit cheaper than other times, or maybe having a little less barrier to entry than maybe in a tougher time. And that's kind of where we're at. So that's why I DM'd you and kind of asked for your advice. Here we are.
Yeah, I dig it. So I have 2 questions, and that are kind of like jump off points. And the first one is, just what's your current, and we don't have to go too far down this rabbit hole. What's your current thoughts on native affairs of CrossFit? Like, what bucket do you fall in? I mean, clearly you're about to buy an affiliate, or you want to buy an affiliate. So I feel like you're in.
Yes, I'm in, and I'm encouraged, and I think it's going in, and I think it was doing well despite, like, I love Greg and what he did, but he did have a tendency to kind of put his foot in his mouth. So I think that CrossFit did well despite him doing that, numerous times throughout the years. And I think it will continue to do well, but now under Eric, I think it's going to thrive. I think the games being forward facing is good because it's going to draw people in. Glassman always thought that it would kind of push people away, but I actually think it's a draw. That's what really drew me in. I'm a former high school athlete, and then you get done with high school and you kind of have nothing else to kind of stimulate you in that way. And that's where CrossFit comes in. And if you can get it visible on TV, the games, the highest end, the tip of the spear, to me, that's great for the sport, regardless of what, Greg may have thought about that.
Cool. Yeah. I tend to fall in camp and more of an abundance. It's like, hey, these things can definitely feed each other. So why don't we make that happen?
Right.
So, okay. So the second questions. So clearly, very rarely does somebody start to go down this road of thinking about acquiring or opening their own CrossFit gym because they are over the top happy about where they are. That being said, and we don't have to name affiliates or any of that stuff, what is it that you've experienced that you want to do differently that started that? What was kind of like a couple of the nuggets that kind of started this thought to be like, well, I would do this differently. I think I could do this better.
I mean, one big thing would be not enlisting enough help, trying to do everything by yourself. I've seen multiple owners do that and run themselves into the ground, not willing to reach out to form a team, or not kind of knowing what to do, but then not taking any action to do it. Even if you don't know, then try to learn. I mean, I'm not saying any of this is easy, obviously. Providing leadership is a tough thing. That's definitely one thing. I've witnessed a lot of kind of owners catering to the vocal minority and not always doing what's best for the majority. And I'm like, since when did the majority not kind of roll? You're going to have to make some unpopular decisions, I'm sure, along the way, but you can't just go out and like please one person at the behest of everybody else. I don't see how that makes sense as an owner.
It definitely doesn't. And that's usually, in my experience, this is not a blanket statement. It's usually a pretty much easier solution than people think it is. Just directly to the source, head that thing off at the pass, solve that person's problem, and then move on.
Right.
Is usually the best option. But this is, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, that scenario usually gets out of hand because the statement starts like this: everybody feels like X.
Right.
And it's like, literally, no, that is never the case. It's just like, who is this person? What is their name? I'm going to go talk to them. Then you find out it's like one person in the gym. Okay. And then let me ask you this. What's your background? Like work-wise?
I do low voltage cabling. So I'm in the trades, in construction, basically.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Which is pretty common in kind of that region. Like a bunch of buddies who are electricians and linemen and stuff like that.
I don't want to sit still. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit at a desk all day. So
got it. Okay. No, I only ask because it's usually a relevant question with regard to like personnel management. Like how many, like have you managed people in the past?
So yeah,
like,
I do. I manage crews. Like I've been at my job almost 13 years now. So I manage a crew of guys under me. You have to get people to work for you. You have to know how to motivate them and keep them intrigued and make them feel like they're all part of it. You know what I mean?
Is that a union based job?
Pittsburgh is huge union. Pittsburgh
That's what I thought.
Very, very big union city. So if you're not union, it's kind of tough to get work. So yeah, I am in it. Yeah.
Okay. I only ask because like I don't know if that affects. I've never worked in a union structure, so I'm not sure if that affects leadership and how you manage people, because there's certain things you just have to do it that way. But I would imagine that the Navy is kind of very similar. Like it's a big union. Like
probably right. Yeah, kind of right. There's
so you're kind of hamstrung some certain ways. Okay. So obviously you said you're in a discussion. So first question I have is, or not the first question, but some of the following questions. How did that initial discussion come about?
So I talked to my girlfriend, obviously, and she's been very privy to everything that's been going on throughout COVID and everything that I've been seeing people go through. And actually at my house, when gyms shut down, I happen to have a pretty big home gym with a lot of equipment. I also have friends who have a lot of equipment. So we started organizing partner wads at my house, outside in my driveway, trying to be as like socially distant as we can. But I was trying to give my friends and like my closest people somewhere to go during COVID, when there were literally no gyms, when you could not go to a gym. It wasn't in existence. So we started small and we did like 4 people. Then next week it was 8. Literally we're up to like 20 plus people in my driveway, doing partner wads, throwing down. And it's a great time, man. And it just kind of made me see that, if I kind of organize this properly, and everyone's kind of looking at me like the figurehead because it's at my house and I'm keeping it fun. And then we have some drinks after and we grill out on the grill, and we'll go we'll go in the sprinkler, we'll play in the water, water games, whatever it may be. It was kind of like I'm building my own community, and it was pretty neat kind of concept to me. And I'm like, well, now I kind of want to take that and scale it up into an actual gym that could be something, not necessarily profitable. I want to be profitable, of course, but I want to at very least be able to provide people somewhere to go that's a lot of fun. They can have that best hour and like really maintain that. And I've also seen gym owners kind of, as they go through their lifeline, lose track of that best hour idea. And they start thinking too much about dollars and cents and not enough about having fun, and the stress of the actual money and having skin in the game, I think starts to get to people. So
I can absolutely empathize with that. And this is it is the biggest pitfall of affiliate owners. And quite frankly, I wish somebody had clubbed me over the head 10 years ago and had a very direct conversation with me. So I'm going to have it with you, which is my recommendation to everybody when they start this is be very wary and quite frankly, do everything to avoid that mindset of, I just want people to have a good time and I just want to make sure they have fun. Because if that is what you want to do, you can do exactly what you were just doing in your garage and you will be the happiest man on earth and people will have a good time. Sure. Because the second this becomes a business, that mindset will crush you. And at some point you will become salty about this whole thing because you didn't put, and this is, I don't remember what book this is in, but I think it's Good to Great, but it might be Built to Last, but they're both same author, which is escaping me right now. But the idea that customer service and being pragmatic can exist together is nonsense. I can be customer service oriented and run a business that is very, very profitable. And that is what you should strive for because they actually feed on each other. So this concept is no different than the games. Those things should not and are not at odds. If you dial them up correctly and you do them well, they both feed each other. If I run a profitable business and I am in fact somebody who just is very giving and want to give back to the community, all that will allow you to do is give back more, which is how it should work. So from the get-go, I always tell people, like, you have to treat this like a business and you have to make money because if you don't, it will seep into your personal life and it will ruin you.
Yeah.
That is 100% what will happen.
Yeah.
So it's not that they have to, they don't have to be at odds. You should always be thinking of them as the same thing. Okay. How do I simultaneously create a healthy, profitable business that makes money and serves me? Because this is going to suck a lot out of you. Meaning, like, it's going to take a lot of your time. It's going to take a lot of your emotion. It's going to take a lot of your money. It needs to give back to you. That's what businesses are for. Otherwise, stay in your garage or start a nonprofit, which is a whole different discussion. And that doesn't mean that you're selfish. It means that you're smart, right? You know, a perfect example is Eric. He just bought CrossFit because he wants this thing to thrive, right? And he's going to put a lot of time and money and effort into it, but he wouldn't have been able to do that has he not been running a profitable business before.
Right.
So this is something that I really wish somebody would, because I was the same person who's just like, I don't care if it makes money. And that always, like, the antennas go up and I'm like, no, that you have to rid that. You have to shed yourself of that mindset immediately because that cannot be the case. And that doesn't mean that you're like this greedy asshole who's like, I'm just going to rake everybody over the coals for money. But you do have to look at your business and be like, hey, what kind of profit margin is this thing running? Am I paying myself? What is the profit margin after that? And if you're talking about building a team like you were before, well, that costs money. You're going to have to pay people to come in and start to fill those slots, which means, hey, if the revenue is not there, guess what? You're the guy. And then whatever it is, 6 months or 5 years or 3 years or whatever, you're the guy who's super salty, grumpy, just like every other gym owner who's doing it poorly now, not because they don't care anymore, because they're just burnt to the core. So just be careful of that. Conversation the other day when they were asking me about it was two questions. The guy who's down in Texas, but it doesn't matter. He said, should I get the business evaluated and should I get a lawyer? And I said, if you're not willing to do those two things on the front end, you should not buy this business because you're already treating it like it's not a business. So treat it like it's a business. If you're not willing to like make a financial investment and treat this thing and get it evaluated and get a lawyer to make all these things, then already you're going down the wrong path. And he was like, good point. And I'm like, I'm trying to help you out, bro. Like, that's the first thing right there. Before you go any further, just that mindset needs to be there, is that like, hey, I want this thing to thrive, which means it's got to make money. You know? Yeah. So
like, I did listen today. I went back and I found your podcast with John Briggs.
Yep.
And I listened to that, and so I own Profit First for micro gyms, but I only just got it. Like literally, I started this week, this journey,
cool.
you know.
That's awesome.
Week. So I have it. I haven't read it yet, but I did listen to that podcast, and he talks about that, how you need to take some sort of a profit, even if it's 1%, you know, right away. You guys talked about that in there, just so you got something in there. And I really liked that. That was very profound for me. And that was literally just learned that today. So, you know, we're very new to the journey, and
that's cool. So I would go back to listen to his, and then the most recent one I had did with Mike McAllowitz, who wrote
I
Profit
listened
First.
to that one too. Yeah.
That one, and that was cool for me because that guy legitimately kind of like changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Fix This Next is another very interesting concept with regard to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the business and all that stuff. So do all that stuff. And on that note, I mean, I will type this email out today. As you go through this process, my other advice to you would be like, in no way, shape, or form should you feel in a hurry or pressured to do it. Take your time.
Okay.
Because you'll make a bad decision if you don't. So I mean, if it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months.
Right. I guess I don't have a timeline because of that. I kind of am in that mind freight, and I just keep hearing like from you guys a lot is like get everything written down or like specifics written down as much as possible, so you've taken care of that before you even go into business. So when these situations kind of arise, you've already accounted for it. Obviously, there are things you can't account for, and that's kind of what makes it fun sometimes. But
it's also the thing that you lose the most sleep over. That oh shit, I didn't do this beforehand.
Yeah.
And now I'm here. We're here at this crossroads, and I am fully unprepared for this. And it's just the worst place to be as a business owner. It's just like you just feel like you're drowning, and it's terrifying. And it's going to be the thing that'll like make you age. So okay, so you start having the conversation. So what, in general, is this owner? Are they trying to get out, or is it going to be a full buyout? Is this a percentage buyout, or are you still in the conversation about that?
For me, I'm not looking to buy anybody out. I want to start my own situation, basically.
So you're gonna start from scratch.
Yeah, ideally.
Okay.
Yeah, which is obviously a lot harder. But I do have friends who are owners who I've reached out to kind of pick their brains, and a couple of my friends have been willing to sit down. I've actually had sit down conversations and just pick their brain and kind of I didn't even know what insurance a CrossFit gym, gets, sort of like liability insurance on your, I don't know. And that's the thing too, is like, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So, I don't even know all the right questions to ask because I don't know what I don't know,
Got it. So my first two answers there would be either affiliate guard or the RRG. To my knowledge, the RRG, they're very in line. I don't know if they're exactly the same, so I'm not going to say that they are, but the RRG can be a little bit more pricey.
Okay.
But affiliate guard's great. Vaughn and those guys, actually I need to have them on the podcast, but Vaughn and those guys are good. Okay. So then
I'm right.
So then the second question, or I keep saying second first, like those are the first and second questions. The next question would be, is there demand, right? So like geographically, I don't know what the affiliate map kind of looks like in your area. And then have you started looking at that to try to figure out what is this going to cost me?
Sure. So just to give you some backstory, during COVID, we probably had 3 or 4 gyms in my local area closed down.
Permanently?
Yeah. Shut doors. Yeah. Did not reopen. I mean, it's sad to me because I want to, even though I'm trying to get in the space, I still want everyone to do well. And like you guys,
I'm the same way.
There's enough juice for everybody, right?
Yeah.
If I'm only taking 100 or 200 members in a town that has 50, 100, 200,000, that's not, I'm not trying to impede on anyone else. So there is demand. There definitely is demand. And as long as I would pick an area where I'm not right on top of one of the others, there's a couple bigger gyms in our area that really do it well and are more than just CrossFit. They do the yoga, they do the boxing, they do the, whatever you can think of, they offer it all, and it's all under their umbrella. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near one of them because they would put me out quick. You know what I mean? And they have their following. I don't want to be right up the street from someone like that, stuff like that. So I'm trying to be strategic, and there are obviously areas around the city where there's more affluent areas, but also your rent's going to be higher. So you're kind of, do I want to try to get into one of those? I'm a big believer in location visibility. I would love to be able to open my garage door and I'm right on some sort of a main drag or some sort of an area where people are driving by a lot, because then it kind of markets itself, and I don't have to, the idea would be I don't have to market as much or do as much outside marketing. So it's going to be tricky to find a location, and I think that's going to be the hardest thing to do, to find like that, what I would consider that perfect location, or that really ideally good location. Obviously I don't want to be too big, but don't want to be too small. I want to have room to expand, running somewhere, and parking, issues like that, trying to take everything into account,
my general guidance there is like, for sure, location is a thing. However, you're not a retail facility.
Right.
So I'm not going to discount location because I know there's some gyms that smash it, quite frankly, purely on location. And because everything else is not great. The flip side of that is you're gonna pay, and you're gonna pay something to the tune of double what you would pay in rent for like a warehouse or an industrial area. So, we've been in an industrial plex for 10 years. And what I would tell anybody is that while location does matter, what matters far more is your presence with regard to blog writing, social media, and all, and then how good you are at your, because example, there's a guy that I've been seeing for like 10 years who's he's a neurokinetic osteopath. He's like the way I would explain it, he's like a chiropractor on like the Incredible Hulk steroids. Like he's amazing. It's a joke. We call him the shaman. In 10 years, I've never had something he couldn't fix. And this dude is in the back office of a real estate office. Nobody knows who he is, but this guy's so damn good at what he does that you cannot get in to see him unless you are basically referred to by somebody else. So you can overcome all of that by just being amazing because and having some things in place that would capitalize on that, right? First, I got to be good. Then I have to have some systematic things that would capitalize on me being good, right? Which is things like a referral program, a systematic way to do like bring a friend week, stuff like that, which doesn't cost me anything, right? It's all free, right? And I don't need to run ads or do any of that other stuff because most people do it like shit anyway. So I wouldn't necessarily go for that like location. I would prove your salt first, then think about moving and potentially getting a different location. You're just going to leverage yourself too much. Yeah. Right. Particularly because at least for some duration, you're going to have to do this in conjunction with your day job. Yes. Until maybe you get to the point where you're just like, all right, well, this is great. I'm leaving that and I'm going to do the gym full time. So you definitely don't want to be leveraged to the hills and have, 80% of your revenue go to rent. Like that's just going to be a rough life. So I kind of get people to shy away from big spaces and prime location if it's their initial kind of entryway is where they're going, unless they have significant capital that they're using from something else, or they're a real estate person and they have then by all means leverage all the things you have. But most people, I'm like, you got to do it not necessarily on the cheap, but you need to be financially responsible. So it matters, but not necessarily as much as everybody thinks. There's a lot of ways to work around that. So, and then have you started to do you have a real estate agent or somebody that could start looking?
Yeah, I have a friend kind of in real estate. We've been doing the Google search looking around, and then I just found out recently that another friend's father is actually in the warehouse game in the.
There you go.
So we're gonna reach out to him and see if he's on to anything that would possibly work for us or something coming up or whatever it may be.
On that, go back and listen to I think it's my second interview with Jeff Westmoreland, who CrossFit Legal Action Group. We did it literally in an hour and 20-minute podcast solely on this, signing a lease. There's it's in there. So that one has all the stuff we should have known 10 years ago, because I've made a lot of mistakes on that one. Okay, so what kind of questions do you have for me? So I've been kind of peppering you here for a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're fine. That's fine. I love it. But the main question, I guess, first and foremost, just would you if you were me, put yourself in my shoes, right? And COVID and CrossFit going crazy and we don't know the future and all this stuff. Would you open a gym right now? Do you think it's possible? Would you do it?
I'm trying to think of how I want to answer this so I can clearly illustrate my thoughts on this. So the first thing is, the answer is it depends. And so I'm not going to punt this question, but I do want to elaborate on it a little bit. So I would if everything made sense. I would not if it didn't, right? So that's a real fluffy way of saying I don't have a fucking answer, right? This is also an interesting question. I try to be really forthcoming with this. And I was talking to, I have like a lot of like retired Navy SEALs and stuff here, and they're just all, and just active you guys here. But one guy, he's a great dude. And he retired after like 24 years, something like that in the team. And then one day we were at breakfast or something like that. I was like, would you do it again? And he was like, probably not. He's like, if I knew then what that was going to take, he was like, I would have never done it. And to some degree, ignorance is bliss, and it can be very beneficial. And I would actually probably, like, very honestly, if I was to rewind 10 years and I was to walk into myself's office 10 years ago and be like, this is all the bullshit that you're going to deal with, I don't know that I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that same breath, I would also say I wouldn't do it any differently.
Yeah.
It's just a learning process, right? So I guess this is a weird roundabout saying, a way of saying, I think everybody should assess just like, what is the scenario that I'm dealing with? And have I bounced this off enough people that are smarter than me and done my due diligence? So this is the mistake that I made repeatedly over many, many, many years, is like, I just assumed that was the answer. And I never asked anybody to say, hey, is this correct? Am I being a moron? And please tell me no if you think this is dumb. Because the initial answer might be no, but that doesn't mean the overall answer is no. The answer might be no to that space. Or it might be no to this contract. It doesn't mean it's a no. It just means pump the brakes until it works better for you.
Right.
And, and most of the mistakes I've made with regard to businesses have all fallen in that bucket, which was hasty. You did it too quickly and you didn't do your due diligence because you're like, shiny thing, that looks amazing. Yeah. I'm going to go do it. Instead of just saying, is that really what I want to do? Or am I being distracted by things?
Sure.
We tried to start an additional business, like a third business last year in 2019, failed miserably. It was what it was. And when I went back and reevaluated, I got shiny object syndrome, and lost a shitload of money.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
Yeah.
But, I don't recommend that, and I wouldn't want to do it again. But what I gained from that, I probably couldn't pay enough money for that
sure.
lesson, So I think I don't know if I would do it right now because, quite frankly, like, I haven't been in that space, like looking to purchase something. Mm-hmm. All I would tell somebody is like, pull the lawyer in, pull the accountant in, pull all of those people in, and there's going to be some common themes there. And you're going to let all of the information tell you whether you should do that or not, in combination with like running it through a couple of personal filters. Like, do I actually have the time for this? Mm-hmm. I don't kind of know what your work schedule is, but like, that's a real question.
Sure.
Because if you're working a 40-hour work week, well, now you're working a 70-hour work week.
Right.
Right. So, I don't know. You tell me if that's a fair answer or not. I don't know.
No. I agree. And I think there's some good takeaways from that. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, I'm in that kind of phase of, I'm looking at locations, I'm seeing how much things are going to cost, and I'm putting all these numbers together to see if it's going to make sense. I'm trying to assemble a team around me that I know they're people I can count on, and then kind of test them throughout the process, or kind of get more familiar with them and make sure everybody's on board and really wants to do this before you just dive right in. So stuff like that. So I think I'm in that kind of that vetting process that early on, I don't have a location yet. I don't have a real solid plan. We're just kind of getting it all together, and I want to see if maybe it can make sense. And I think if it does, we're going to go through, and obviously I really want it to make sense, but I think you're right. I have to be honest with myself. And if it doesn't make sense, like, no, or, revamp or try it a different way or whatever it may be.
I think so. There's definitely some things that you should do your due diligence on if I'm acquiring a business, which is like most of the conversations that I'm having right now with people. But you could use the same information if you were going to just start from scratch. So I don't know what your relationship with any of the affiliate owners in that area is, but sometimes an easy solution to this is just offer to sign an NDA and say, look, I would like to ask you for some information. And if geographically, the further away you can get from somebody, the more likely they might be to do this if you sign an NDA. And maybe just basically get something that their P&L, just be like, hey, listen, can I take a look at your books? Because I'm trying to figure out like what the actual no shit cost of running this business is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it, like if you could do all the legwork and figure it out, but it's still going to be a swag at best.
Right.
And then take what they have and you can bounce that off of comps for real estate. Like, is there, what is the contract going to look like? Water, utilities, all that other stuff. What do they pay in payroll? Like how many hours do those people work versus how much does the owner work? And you could start to get a really, really good picture of like, okay, well, this is legit what it's going to cost me. How long is it going to take me to get that amount of revenue in the door? Mm-hmm. Right. And then, something that I talked about, which I found there was shitty audio on this one, so I'm kind of pissed, but I just did one a week ago with the, the 10 mistakes.
Yes, I like it. Was a great episode. But yeah,
but yeah, somebody was like, "Hey, the audio on that was like this clicky and stuff." I'm like, "God damn it!" So really take some time to figure out like what you want your business to look like and how you want it to work. And meaning like, how do I want to bring people in to be clients? What do I want to sell them? Like, is it just group class? And I have no interest in personal training. Do I want to do some sort of PT first model? Is it foundations only? But these are all the things that if you take the time to figure them out on the front end, you'll be so much better served. So when you open up that door, like everything just runs and you can make small little tweaks instead of reinventing the wheel every month. That's what a lot of people end up doing. And realistically, I would tell you, I mean, I'm redoing that right now and I'm 10 years in and that process probably takes no less than 6 months to go through.
Yeah.
And this is from somebody who, I mean, I definitely don't have it all figured out, but like have a lot of things in place already. So some of it I'm getting rid of, I'm scratching together, and some of them I'm doing it completely differently the second time. So, but it still takes a lot of thought and effort, and should, because you're going to spend a lot of time there. And if you don't design something and try to build something that you love, you probably inevitably will hate it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice and really well said. So yeah, just like kind of Profit First talks about how like no financially stable gyms are only offering CrossFit only. I would not be looking to offer CrossFit. I definitely would do PT nutrition services at least right away, and try to expand that offering as we go and build our kind of reputation.
And so then that would have like a following question, because who's going to do all of those? How am I going to do them? Right. Because that's more overhead, right? So it's personnel, which is great. Like the more PT you can bring in, or the more teammates you can bring in, the better. The one thing I would recommend, particularly for somebody who's newer, is, and you can probably outline most of these things, and I'm happy to give them to you.
Sure.
Is I would look at getting a VA probably within the first 2 months, so a virtual assistant. So I did a podcast with Matt Albrizio from Forever Fierce about this.
Yeah.
And I've been using one for the past 3 months, and I've tried to use one in the last, and I talked about this in that podcast too, but
remember hearing about it.
It can make you so productive and relieve you of the things that will be your nightmare, particularly upon startup, which is just like all nuances and little things within the business, because most of the things that need to happen on the back end, like everybody already knows what they are. Like anybody's running a gym, like I need these 5 things, or I need whatever.
Right.
If you can get all that teed up at first, this is how go back to where we were a minute ago, which is provide an amazing experience, and you start bringing in these referrals because you're just awesome from day one, and you can avoid the burnout syndrome from the person who is trying to do email follow-ups and doing the accounting and trying to run social and doing all of that a really good way. It's pretty clear that that's the business, because very financially feasible.
Okay.
So something to consider.
Yeah, right. And I only just recently heard you talking about that. I never knew about that until recently, like the virtual assistant thing. I heard you mention it in one of the more recent ones you were talking about, your virtuals. And I was like, oh, that's
I talked about it with Matt. I tried it years ago because I read it in Tim Ferriss's book in 4 Hour. And then I failed because I didn't really understand it. I didn't really know what they should be doing and how they should be doing it and how to train them, how to and then Matt kind of turned me back onto it, and I started doing some digging. And then I found out there's all sorts of people out there that are using it. I talked to Nathan Holiday, and he's the same one. He's in one for a long time. And then typically what you find out is these people that you think are, and that they're not uber productive because they are productive, but a lot of these people, they're like, dude, these people sleep. They sleep a lot. They sleep plenty because they got somebody else doing a lot of those things for them, which is part of the whole leveling up process of being an entrepreneur. So
right. No, that makes sense.
I will say one thing with regard to that. The VA is not a, how do I say this? This is not a get out of jail free card to punt all of the shit that you don't want to learn to do. And that's a super important aspect of that, is you should be fully versed at that task so that you can teach them how to do it first and then hand it off. And what I tried to do was, I was just like, I don't want to do this bullshit. I don't know how to do it. You do it. And it did not go well. So, and a lot of people will make that mistake. It is not an opportunity for you to punt on things that you don't know how to do. Like, you should learn them, particularly if you're, you know, in the startup phase of that. Like, you should be kind of a master of all, you know, a jack of all trades and a master of none. So,
no, I agree with that. For sure. I guess the next question, I mean, I've listened to, you have your 10 biggest mistakes, and you guys, there's actually a previous one with you and Ackerman where you guys also talked about some other mistakes you made, but what would be like the single biggest piece of advice that you give someone looking to buy a gym, either both, you know, now during COVID or just in general? You can either answer that both ways, as during COVID, what would be a good piece of advice, or just as an in general, what's like the single biggest kind of piece of advice you tell anyone trying to get into the gym space?
I don't think it matters whether it's pre-COVID or not. I think the process would be the same. Again, if we use the stocks analogy, it's kind of, you know, whether you're going to buy stocks, whether they're down or they're up, is kind of irrelevant, because you probably shouldn't be buying stocks unless you know anything about the stock market anyway, right? Like, unless I understand how it all works. So with that analogy, what I would say is, like, I don't think that matters. You could probably just get it at a cheaper price if you were going to acquire, maybe do a startup, because real estate is probably going to do a little bit of a dip here for a while. But I would probably just reiterate what I said earlier, is you have a very distinct advantage starting this process now in 2020 than morons like me did in 2009, when I was just like, how hard could it be? You know, turns out real fucking hard, you know? So do your due diligence. You know, I got an email yesterday, and we were kind of talking about this beforehand, where I got a little grumpy because they were just like, oh, we hadn't thought of that. And I was just like, God damn it. I was like, email me, call me. I will tell you these things. Like, it's like there's no reason, and quite frankly, no excuse to make some of these mistakes at this point. There's been enough gym acquisitions. There's been enough people. There's 15,000 people started affiliates, probably 20,000 quite frankly. So, you know, people don't have that excuse anymore. It's just like, well, I didn't know any better. And I was like, well, then you just didn't want to know.
You're ignorant or whatever.
You're willfully ignorant at this point, which is probably a foreshadowing of your future in the industry, right? So it's just like, you know, it's like, hey, ask around, and then when you think you have all the answers, ask again, and then go to a different resource and see what they say. So, you know, there's a ton of stuff out there. There's, you know, I'm trying to think. There's Mad Labs, there's Two Brain, you know, Stu's got What the Fuck Gym Talk. There's, you know, Marcus was doing, but and all his content is still out there, was doing Barbell Logic and Gym Breakthrough. I'm trying to think of what else. There was another one, like there's an Aussie guy, I don't remember what his name, but like affiliate something, not affiliate solutions.
So like you're talking about like a mentor program almost?
Something like that. But I mean, there's a lot of this information that you could get for free. Like, you could get most of this stuff, you know, and then you'll at least be armed with the ability to ask the right questions. You know, so that's what I would tell, is like, hey, you know, and then call up a number of affiliate owners and call you know, just literally cold call and cold email people who you are like, hey, you know, I'd like to get 5 minutes of your time, and they might tell you to piss off, who knows, but like, whatever, like, you know, it's worth it, you know, shoot your shot. You know, like, I mean, you DM'd me and I was like, fuck yeah, let's do a podcast, you know? So
A friend of
You
mine
know, like
DM'd James Hobart, and he responded as well, like saying
yeah,
someone
so
else in our kind of crew here, our group. It's great. I love
exactly.
it.
So, you know, and another great resource. I mean, he's involved in multiple gyms in the Boston
Right,
area, and
right.
basically married to Austin. So, you know, like those, like that would be my advice.
Married
Is
to
like you got to do your homework. Like
right.
there is no excuse to just blindly walk in and be ignorant at this point. Like most of the mistakes have been made,
Yeah,
and most of them you can find if you do a
yeah,
minimal amount of digging on the internet. So that's what I would say. And we could all probably agree, like the CrossFit community is like one of the more generous communities
yeah,
on planet Earth. Like very
for sure.
few people are going to be like, no time for you, bro. Like,
Right,
you know, so
right.
that is what I would do. And I would do that. I
So
would
one.
probably do it 3 times as many times as I thought was necessary.
Okay.
Like, you know,
And then in the accessibility is there. It's like you said, there's kind of no excuse not to, right? The people are accessible. I think there's been a message sent to Jason Khalipa as well. I mean, we're going for like the heavy hitters in the space and they're responding. And that's kind of crazy to me. Like it kind of blows my mind a little bit, but it's also speaks to the community and how great it
yeah.
is.
And then the only other thing is I would zoom out with all of those people, with me, with Khalipa, with whoever you talk to, and just ask yourself some very basic questions about it. Be like, what about this person or this entity resembles me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've been pretty vocal about this, and I don't have any beef with anybody, but it is relevant. Like context matters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people look at like the Jason Khalipas and the Ben Bergerons, and they're wildly successful, and I'm all for that. Like good for you guys, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. Like there's some
Right.
things they have that are at their advantage, you know, which is just notoriety and fame.
Right.
And however you feel about that, like it is what it is, and it's a lever that if you've got it, you should pull it. That's how I feel about it.
Right.
So is that something I can replicate? Is the model they're using what I want to do, or am I doing that because everybody says that it's works, but that's not really how I want to do my gym?
Right.
You know?
Just got to be true to yourself, I
Yeah, you
guess.
got to be true to yourself, and then go find the person who's successful that looks like what you want to look like, or who looks
Mm-hmm.
like you, and go talk to that person. Now, regardless of who all of those different variables, there's going to be a lot of overlap, right? Like successful
Mm-hmm.
businesses are successful businesses. I don't care if we're
Mm-hmm.
running a pizza shop or running a CrossFit gym. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I do want to find those common pillars of successful businesses. And then what I want to do is then I want to find the one that I want to look like, or that looks most like me, and then try to replicate that to find out like what it is about them that they're being successful with. So
Yeah.
that would be my like very long-winded answer about like what I would do. So
like a short follow-up on that would be, so like these things that are like, a 2Brain mentor or something, would you recommend somebody, it's a paid service, obviously, any of these ones, these more, the bigger ones, and they're not just going to give away all the secrets to the castle for free, whatever. Would you recommend, so say someone like me as a startup, would you recommend somebody doing that? When do I do that? Do I do that on day one? Should I have already done that? Should I be doing that? Or do you not recommend those at all? Or
no, I mean, I've done almost all of them. You know, I've done multiple. I've done 2Brain. I did 2Brain twice. I've done. I worked with Marcus Gersey when he was at Barbell Logic, and then when he did Gym Breakthrough. I'm currently working with Sean Pastuch. So no, I'm fully on board with like, listen, don't feel like you know the answers, because you don't. Now, when and how you do that, it's kind of up to you, and it goes back to the question is like, I don't know if you could afford it. But if you want it, this is kind of like the weird, if you want to get like all Tony Robbins on people.
Yeah.
If you want it, you'll figure out a way to afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just like, hey, if that's the house of your dreams, but you need $10,000 tomorrow, my guess is that you'd find $10,000 by tomorrow.
Right.
You'd be like,
right.
Dad, like, here's what I'm going to do. And they'll be like, here's a check, like whatever. So yeah, I mean, I've never, being smart is like being strong. Like nobody has ever been like, God, I wish I wasn't so smart. Like that.
Right.
Nobody, like not one human being on the face of the earth is like, man, I wish I didn't know all this stuff.
Right.
So yeah, like the more things you can arm yourself with to be educated about doing that and try to lean and learn off of other people's experiences, like I am all for it. Right. You just have to factor it in. Like, where does this factor in like my purchase, the sale, what can I afford? Like how much time do I want to spend going through all this process?
Yeah.
And then by all means do it,
Yeah.
I'm not against any of that stuff.
Okay. I got another question, I guess, on ownership in general. What are your thoughts on partnerships, other than just a solo owner, bringing someone else into the fold?
I know very few of them are successful because most gyms don't make enough money to support two owners. But
So
I do know
what if?
I do know
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
couple. I do know
So
a couple.
what if you go into it with very, you understand that you're probably not going to make any money at first, right? I mean, they say 5 years for a small business. Sometimes I have a family in the small business, and they said it took them 10 before they were profitable. Now they're 15 in and they're doing very well, but it took 10 years to get there. You know what I mean? If you have no expectation of profit, you split it 50-50. You understand that you guys are both going to be handling the brunt of the load. This person would ideally also be at least an L1, so someone who also could pick up the coaching. The reason why I'm asking this is because I've seen the people that have driven themselves into the ground, and it falls on somebody called off to coach. Now it's on you, stuff like that, staffing issues. And to me, it looks like, oh, well, that's someone else that could pick up that part of it. It's also someone else that maybe is better at things that I'm not, and we could divide and conquer. If you do it right, is that such a bad thing?
No, it's not a bad thing. So I'm not against partnerships. I just know typically, if we're talking about the CrossFit space as a niche, most gyms don't make enough or turn enough to support two owners. So it's like, hey, be profitable, and then you can just pay people to do those things, right? But if we're both trying to pull off of this thing, and then this contract or this expectation wasn't very clearly on day one, and we talk about like, where do we want to be? Not just this year, but like in 10 years, like what the fuck do you want out of this thing? Like, do you just want to be a passive owner? Like, do you want to pull $5,000 a month? Like, you have to have those like real, like having a conversation with your spouse, just like, how do you feel about money? Do you like kids? Like, what, like whatever, so like have all those super uncomfortable conversations, because you might come to that realization, be like, this isn't going to work. Like how do you feel about like me calling you up at 5:45 a.m. be like, you got the 6 a.m. bro, because you're closer. And so then nobody showed up. And they're like, fuck that, I'm not doing it. And you're like, then this probably isn't going to work. Practically it's very seldom successful in this space. Partnerships are a thing, and in a lot of instances, like it's not even a bad idea to give up equity of a company if that makes sense, to bring in somebody who fills a gap in your business, but generally not in the CrossFit space.
Okay. So a question on kind of like, obviously I'm starting up, I'm trying to put everything together. What are your thoughts on like a business plan? I know every business needs a business plan. That's not really a question, but how much stock do you put into a business plan? How much time should I spend on this? When my general thought is like, it's something that could, secure your SBA loan, all that good stuff. But after like, a few months, people seem to just toss them out the window. So how much time do I spend on that?
It's a tool. If you're trying to get money, it's probably a must. You probably have to do it. But from the standpoint of like spinning up and running your business, not really. But you do need to spend some time running your business. So not in the sense of a traditional business plan, probably not a ton, but you should go through that process of like, what do I want it to look like? What kind of like, what is the vision? So it's like kind of like a softer version of a business plan. You should absolutely do that. And that's what I was referring to earlier about, like, you should spend some time like ironing out, like, what the hell do I want this to look like? And so that is kind of a business plan. The business plan, people just tend to make it really rigid. And there is no business plan that I'm aware of. So it's like CrossFit gym, where somebody's come up with a good model for that. Unfortunately, Marcus isn't doing it anymore, but I thought Marcus Guerzi was one of the best at like ironing out that whole fucking shit show of just like, what do you want? So
I mean, and like even on SBA.gov, there's they have like a short form business plan and a long form, kind of depending what you're kind of trying to do. So it sounds like if you're not necessarily trying to get funding, then you could go with that short form.
Short form's fine.
What you're trying to do.
And you might not need it at all. Like, you might want to go to the bank and be like, what do you guys need? And they're like, we're going to need a business plan. I'm like, do you have one that you use? And they're like, yes, use this one. I'm like, all right, well, fuck, we just skipped that whole process of me Googling the ends of the internet. So, well, listen, man, I don't want to cut this short, but I do have to run to class. We may do a follow-up on this, but I hope this has been helpful, dude.
Dude, it's been great. I seriously appreciate your time. This is getting me more excited, and I just want to learn more.
Cool, dude. Well, listen, I'm happy to do a follow-up offline on any of this stuff. So if you have any more questions, shoot them over my way, dude. But I hope other people find this helpful, because this is a question that's going around quite a lot and people are having questions about. So I hope you guys found this helpful, and good luck either way, brother. Wishing you the best.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you in August, I think.
All right, bro.
All right, Fern. Take care, man.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for either Fern or myself, hit us up, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com, or send us a DM over on Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day. Once again, we couldn't do this without the amazing community, and you are a part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Best Hour of Their Day.